You've given everything for someone, and discovered that, in the end, there was nothing left, not even for you? Helena never imagined that a marriage of almost 30 years could end in silence. No shouting, no arguments, just a cold phrase that pierced her chest like a knife. I want a divorce. She didn't react at the time. She only felt her heart race, her hands grow cold, and her breath catch in her throat. Her husband, who for so many years had shared dreams and meals with her, seemed like a different person as he continued. And I'm already with someone else. The lawyers will take care of the rest. The rest, as if the rest wasn't exactly her entire life. On the floor, next to the door, 2 suitcases. She hadn't packed them. He had, like someone getting rid of an object that no longer serves a purpose, that no longer matches, that is no longer useful. Helena held the handles of the suitcases, and for the first time in years, she felt she was holding her own emptiness. She left the house slowly, with short steps, almost staggering. The cold afternoon wind hit her face, but the pain inside burned much more intensely. She looked back and saw the window where she had waited so many times for her husband to return, the garden she had planted, the door she had opened and closed thousands of times, but never like this. And then she heard, behind her, "You don't know how to live alone. You'll end up coming back." She didn't answer, nor did she turn her face away. She just kept walking, like someone trying to piece herself back together before the world realizes she is broken. Little did she know that that cold cobblestone path, the very one that seemed like a mark of defeat, would be the beginning of something so unexpected that it would change everything. That day, Helena left empty-handed, but something new was being born inside her, silent, small, almost imperceptible. And, although she didn't understand it yet, it was the first time in a long time that she carried something that truly belonged to her, herself. Helena had never been one to complain about life. From a young age, she learned that those who get used to fighting end up making strength a habit, even when they don't realize it. It had been like this since early on. Hard work, interrupted studies, dreams kept in a drawer that she never opened again. When she met her husband, still in her youth, she thought this would be the most beautiful story of her life. He made her laugh, said she was the heart of the house, promised a simple but loving future. And Helena believed him. She believed because she wanted to. She believed because she was sweet, because she was loyal, because she thought that caring for someone was synonymous with security. The marriage started beautifully. They were young, poor, but united. Then came the children, and Helena became the center of everything. She cooked, cleaned, organized, took care of the children, went to school, appointments, stayed up all night, dealt with fevers, tears, and fears. And she still found time to support her husband in every project, every change, every financial difficulty. When he wanted to invest in a business that had a 50% chance of failing, she was the one who covered the bills. When he wanted to go back to school, she was the one who worked extra hours. When he arrived late, tired, irritated, she never asked too many questions. She just served dinner, smiled, and said everything would be all right. But while she renounced the world, he learned to feel too big for her. Years passed, and Helena didn't even realize that the marriage was no longer a partnership. It was a sacrifice. She did it out of love. He received it out of habit. And little by little, the man who swore to take care of her began to distance himself. Short sentences, cold answers, absence in his gaze. She asked if everything was all right. He said it was just tiredness. Helena believed. She always believed. Until one day, something inside her began to hurt. A silent emptiness, as if she were living next to a stranger. Her husband no longer praised her. He no longer shared anything. He no longer saw in her the woman who had walked beside him for almost 3 decades. But Helena continued, because she thought that's what marriage was, persisting, waiting, enduring, praying for better days. She never imagined that, while she held the family together with both hands, her husband was building a new life without her, a life where she was no longer welcome, a life where her love had become mere convenience. The loneliness began long before the divorce. She just hadn't realized it. Helena always woke up before her husband. The alarm clock rarely needed to ring. Her body was already trained by years of routine, by a lifetime dedicated to serving, organizing, anticipating what everyone in the house would need. She would get up slowly so as not to wake him, and go straight to the kitchen to make coffee. The smell of toasted bread, the soft sound of the kettle, the clinking of cups. It was all part of a choreography repeated over decades, a dance she knew by heart. While the coffee boiled, she would separate his clothes, set the table, quickly mop the living room floor, because a meticulous woman's house never wakes up messy, as her mother used to say. And even with her tired body, she remained faithful to every detail, as if keeping everything impeccable would guarantee that, somehow, the marriage would also remain standing. When her husband woke up, he came downstairs with his cell phone in hand, his eyes glued to the screen. Before, he greeted her with a kiss on the forehead. Now he only murmured a good morning, without lifting his face. And Helena pretended it didn't hurt. Pretending, for her, was always easier than bothering. He drank his coffee hurriedly, often answering messages while she tried to start a conversation. She asked about his plans for the day. He replied with short sentences. Sometimes, he didn't even answer, and she invented excuses to explain the silence. He's tired. It's just a phase. It will get better. After he left, the house felt too big, too quiet, too empty. Helena cleaned every corner, did laundry, organized closets, sorted bills. In the afternoon, she cooked thinking about what he liked. At night, she waited sitting on the sofa, watching the clock tick by, like someone waiting for a life to return. But little by little, the absences began to grow. Late meetings, unexpected trips. Messages arrived, which he quickly hid with a flick of his thumb. A different feminine perfume lingered on his shirt. Little lies that sounded rehearsed. Helena ignored the obvious. Love is sometimes like that. It blinds you and makes you mute. She believed it was just a phase, that he was stressed, that every marriage goes through ups and downs. Until one day, while tidying his shirt before putting it away in the closet, she found a folded napkin in the pocket. It had lipstick marks and a phone number on it. She stood motionless, with the paper between her fingers, as if the world had stopped. But she took a deep breath and pretended not to see. She put the paper at the bottom of the drawer and continued folding clothes. Pretending was simpler than accepting that she was losing the man she had loved for almost 3 decades. The nights began to get even longer. He would arrive too late, smelling of perfume she didn't wear. He would shower without looking at her, lie on the bed on his back, and sleep as if sharing a mattress with a stranger. Helena wept softly under the blanket, so as not to disturb anyone. She was afraid of hearing confirmation of what she already knew. She was afraid of the emptiness. She was afraid of starting over at 58, without a home, without a job, without her own identity, because her entire life had been dedicated to her marriage. One afternoon, she decided to prepare his favorite dish, hoping that perhaps, just perhaps, the taste of the food would bring back memories of their love. He arrived, looked at the set table, and simply said, "You don't need to do that, Helena. I've already eaten." She stood there, still, with the dish towel in her hand. Her eyes shone, but she swallowed the pain like someone swallowing a daily poison, drop by drop. That night, sitting alone, she realized she was living with a ghost of what her husband once was. And yet, she continued trying to carry a dead marriage in her arms. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her hair was whiter, her skin tired, her eyes dull. And she said softly, almost in a whisper, "I just wanted him to look at me again." But her husband was already far away, even though he was sleeping beside her. Helena was leaning over the sink when she heard the door open. Her husband entered silently, as he had been doing for months. But that night, there was something different in the air, a heavier silence, a colder distance, a scent of unfamiliar perfume that seemed to cling to the walls. He dropped his keys on the table and took a deep breath, as if preparing to say something irreversible. Helena wiped her hands on the cloth and walked slowly towards him. "You're late again," she said in a low voice, trying not to sound needy or insecure. He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor for a few seconds. Then he looked up, and there, in that look, Helena knew that something terrible was about to happen. His face was innocent. There was no doubt. Just a strange calm, the calm of someone who has already made a decision. "Helena," he began, his voice firm, "we need to talk." Her heart stopped for a moment. She had heard that phrase before, on television, in movies, in friends' stories, but she never imagined she would hear it in her own living room. She tried to smile, still believing it might be about work, about a change, about anything that wouldn't destroy her life, but it wasn't. "I want a divorce." The room spun. The air grew heavy. Her legs gave way. Helena gripped the back of her chair to keep from falling. A buzzing filled her ears. She blinked several times, thinking she had misunderstood. "What?" Her voice came out trembling, almost childlike. He didn't repeat it slowly. He didn't explain. He didn't try to soften the blow. "I want a divorce, Helena. It's been a long time since I haven't loved you anymore." Those words pierced her chest like shards. Helena felt something tear inside, not her heart, but their entire history together. "Is there someone else?" she asked in a whisper. He didn't answer. The silence answered for him, and that silence hurt more than any confession. "Yes," she murmured. "That's why you spend so much time away, isn't it?" He ran a hand over his face impatiently. "It's not just that. I've changed. You don't keep up with me anymore. We're very different now. We." The word that had always meant partnership was now a sentence. Helena tried to take a deep breath, but the air seemed to elude her. "After almost 30 years. Is this how you're leaving?" He shrugged. "Life changes. People change." She gripped the dish towel so tightly she almost tore it. "And me? Where do I fit into this change?" He looked away, not out of remorse, but out of impatience. "The lawyers will explain things to you. Everything's already in place." Helena frowned. "Lawyers? What do you mean?" He picked up a folder from the table and handed it to her. Her hands trembled so much she could barely open it. "You signed some documents in the past, remember?" he said with rehearsed coldness. "Back when we opened that loan, and later when we made some adjustments to the house registration." She remembered. He had asked her to sign quickly. He said it was simple bureaucracy. Helena never suspected her own husband. When she finally opened the folder, her blood ran cold, and everything became clear. The house she cleaned, cared for, loved, was in his name. The car, too. Even the savings she helped build had been transferred to another account. "You did this behind my back?" Her voice came out wounded, almost unrecognizable. "It was best for both of us," he replied, as if explaining a grocery purchase. "Best for both of us." But she was the only one who lost everything. "You can't do this," Helena murmured, swallowing tears. He approached, serious, indifferent. "It's done, and you know you can't afford this place alone." Affordable place. Not a single word there spoke of love. Not a single word spoke of respect. He concluded, without looking her in the eye, "Take your things. You can keep the clothes, the jewelry, too. But the house stays with me." Her throat tightened. "And what if I don't want to leave?" He crossed his arms. "Then you'll have to hear it from a bailiff." Helena felt her whole body tremble. The marriage, the life, the sacrifices, everything seemed to magnify the pain. The room where she celebrated birthdays, where she cradled her children, where she cried tears of joy. Now it was just a place where she no longer had space. Without the strength to argue, she climbed the stairs slowly, as if carrying the weight of all the years she had dedicated to that house. She opened the closet. She took out 2 small suitcases. She placed some carefully folded clothes inside. Even while crying, she still cherished the habit of organizing. With each piece put away, a piece of her soul bled. She touched the dress she wore to her son's christening, then the blouse her husband gave her on their wedding anniversary, and she packed everything away like someone wrapping memories to take away. When she went downstairs with the suitcases, he was on the sofa, fiddling with his cell phone. He didn't even get up. She opened the door slowly, without making a sound. But before leaving, she heard the phrase that marked her soul. "You won't be able to do it alone. You don't know how to live without me." Helena closed the door. She didn't answer, because if she answered, she would break. In the dark street, she pulled the suitcase forcefully. Her heart seemed broken into pieces too small to be picked up. That night, she slept on a friend's borrowed mattress. She cried until she fell asleep, and for the first time in her life, she realized she was completely alone. but not defeated, because although she didn't know it yet, that was the day Helena stopped living her husband's life and began, with great pain, to live her own. She woke up before sunrise, but not because she rested. She woke up because her body no longer knew what to do with so much pain. Her eyes burned, her head throbbed, and there was a silence inside her that seemed bigger than the world. Her friend offered her coffee, warm bread, words of comfort. Helena tried to smile, but the smile stuck at the corner of her mouth, as if she had forgotten the way out. "You need to eat, Helena." "I know," she replied, but didn't touch anything. The smell of coffee brought back memories of her old home. How many times had she woken up early just to set the table for him? How many times had she set out 2 cups, even on the days he left without looking at her? Her friend held her hand. "You're not alone." Helena nodded, but inside she didn't believe it, because having a place to sleep is one thing, having a home is another, and hers had been ripped away as if it were nothing. It took her a few days to gather the courage to get out of bed. When she finally got up, the first thing she did was look for her things. The suitcase was still in the corner of the room, the same suitcase she had dragged down the street the night she lost everything. She knelt beside it and unzipped it with trembling hands. She smelled the clothes mixed with the smell of pain. She took out a blouse she had sewn years ago, then the dress she wore to a family party. Each piece was a reminder of the life she had built and lost. She put her face in her hands and cried. She sobbed, her chest tightening, feeling the world collapse for the second time. She cried until her throat hurt. It wasn't just the marriage that had ended. It was her identity. It was the role she had played for almost 3 decades. It was the feeling of belonging. Her friend appeared at the door. "Helena, you can't destroy yourself like this." She wiped her face, breathing heavily. "I don't know where to start again." "You will learn. I'm almost 60 years old." Her voice faltered. "Who starts from scratch at that age?" Her friend approached, hugged her. "Those who have no other choice." Helena closed her eyes, and there, in that silent embrace, she realized the size of the emptiness she carried. A whole life dedicated to someone who didn't hesitate to discard her. A whole life built around a man who, in the end, left her with nothing but 2 suitcases and a wounded soul. In the following days, she tried to find a job. She spent hours filling out forms. She stood in lines. She received looks of pity, impatience, and disinterest. In one store, the manager asked her age. Helena answered. The woman smiled, but not kindly. "You have a wonderful experience, but we are looking for someone with more energy." Energy was just a polite word to say, "You're too old." In another interview, the man didn't even let her finish. "Your resume is good, but it's been a long time since you worked outside the home." As if taking care of a house, raising children, and emotionally supporting a husband weren't real jobs. Each door that closed seemed to push her deeper into the abyss. Each, "Sorry, we can't hire you," was a new wound. At night, lying on the borrowed mattress, she looked at the ceiling and wondered, "How did I get here? Where did I go wrong? Why did I accept so much and receive so little?" The answer hurt, because she loved. And loving, sometimes, makes you give up everything, even your own dignity. One morning, while searching for old documents, she found a folder she didn't even remember anymore. Inside were recipe notes, business ideas, drafts of projects she dreamed of doing when her children were small. Simple things: making cakes to order, sewing clothes for others, setting up a small clothing business, selling prepared meals. Helena ran her fingers over the old handwriting. She felt a pang in her chest, not of sadness, but of longing. Longing for the woman she was before becoming just the wife. Longing for the Helena who had dreams. She sat on the bed edge and took a deep breath. For the first time since the divorce, she felt something different inside her. A small flame, almost extinguished, but still alive. "Maybe," she murmured to herself, "I'm not at the end. Maybe I'm being reborn." It wasn't courage. It was necessity. When life takes everything, what remains is a strength that no one sees. And Helena, even wounded, discovered in that moment that she still had something precious, the ability to begin. She took a deep breath, carefully closed her briefcase, and slowly stood up, with timid but firm steps. The fall had been hard, But it was from there, from the ground, that she would finally begin to climb again. Helena woke up before her alarm that morning. And not because she was anxious or happy, but because for the first time in weeks, she felt a kind of restlessness that didn't hurt. It was different, as if something inside her was stirring after a long period of dormancy. She got up slowly, opened the window, and breathed in the cool morning air. The wind hit her face, bringing a shiver that wasn't sadness. It was life. She was still fragile, yes. She was still hurt. But there was something new there, a thread of strength, as thin as the sewing thread she used years ago, but strong enough to pull her back. Her friend served coffee with a smile. "You seem different today." Helena couldn't explain it. "I'm just tired of waiting for life to push me." "And what are you going to do?" She looked at the table, at her hands, at the notebook she'd been carrying since the previous day. "I'm going to try. A small word for such a big heart." That same day, she decided to start with what she knew best: caring. Caring for other people's homes, since her own had been taken over. Caring for other people's clothes, since she had few of her own. Caring for other people's lives, since hers needed time to heal. She called 2 acquaintances and offered to help with cleaning. They both accepted, and that's how she, at 58, returned to the job market with the humblest, but also the most dignified start. On the first day, while scrubbing the floor on her knees, she felt the weight on her back, but didn't lose her breath. When she finished, the lady of the house said, "Helena, your work is impeccable. It seems like the house even breathes differently." Helena thanked her, and for the first time in months, she returned home with a small, but genuine smile. In her second job, she helped in the kitchen of a small bakery. The owner, a kind man, watched how she stirred the pots, how she chopped the vegetables, how she seasoned the food. "You have the hands of someone who cooks with soul," he said. Helena smiled shyly. "I learned cooking from my family." "A big family?" She took a deep breath. "It was—" The man didn't insist. Perhaps he saw the pain in her eyes. After that day, he called her more often. He offered her fixed shifts, and Helena began to have a simple but stable income. She learned to organize her finances, to set aside a little each month, to rebuild her life with short but firm steps. And then came what would change everything. One afternoon, while returning from the bakery, she passed by a community school that offered free courses. On the gate, a poster caught her eye: "Entrepreneurship course for women over 40. She stopped. She read it once. She read it again. Her heart pounded. It seemed written for her. She went in without thinking. The coordinator smiled as she greeted her. "The course has already started, but you can join today. The important thing is wanting to be here." Helena bit her lip, insecure. "I don't know if I can—" "You can," the coordinator affirmed. "You've made it this far, haven't you?" Helena sat in the last chair. She listened to lessons about management, sales, simple marketing, pricing, and manual work. And as she listened, she remembered old recipes, sewing skills, and her passion for creating things with her own hands. Something inside her awakened. In the following days, she returned to the course, always with her old notebook, where she wrote down every word as if it were gold. And it was there, among women who were also starting over, that she discovered she still had a life to live. One of the teachers noticed the sparkle in Helena's eyes and asked, "Have you ever thought about selling what you know how to do?" I don't know if anyone would buy it." "Helena, everything you make has a story, and people buy things that have soul." The phrase echoed within her. That night, she opened her old folder. She sketched cake recipes. She drew simple dress designs. She listed inexpensive ingredients. And there, at the borrowed table, she planned her first menu. It started small, very small. Whole cakes for modest parties, lunchboxes for neighbors, small clothing repairs. Her first client was a friend's neighbor. She asked for a simple birthday cake. Helena made it with so much care that the next day she received 4 orders, all through referrals. In 2 months, she had a client list. In 4, she couldn't handle it alone. And before she knew it, what was an attempt had become a business. One day, while delivering an order to an office, she heard a familiar voice, a voice that made her stomach churn. "You can leave the box here," the man said, without looking at her. Helena turned slowly. Her ex-husband had his back to her, talking on the phone. The world seemed to go silent around her. She could have left unseen. She could have avoided it. But no, she went inside. When he turned and saw Helena with the box in her hands, he paled. For a second, he couldn't utter a word. "You?" he whispered. Helena nodded serenely. "The package is here. You are working with this?" "Yes." He swallowed hard. "I didn't know." She placed the box on the table. "No one needs to know about the life we rebuild," she said calmly. "It just has to be a real life." He took a step towards her, but she stepped back. Not out of fear, out of self-respect. "Helena, You don't need to say anything," she interrupted. "Today I didn't come to hear excuses. I came to deliver a cake." The man remained silent, because she finally understood that the woman he had once destroyed no longer existed. On the way back, Helena cried, not from sadness, but from liberation. For the first time since the divorce, she felt she owed nothing to anyone. She had won, overcome the pain, overcome the fear, overcome the doubt. The woman who left with 2 suitcases and a broken heart now returned with dignity, work, and independence. And she discovered that true rebirth happens when pain ceases to be a burden and transforms into strength. After that unexpected encounter with her ex-husband, Helena returned home with a different kind of silence in her heart. It wasn't the silence of sadness or loneliness. It was the silence of someone who finally understands their own worth and no longer needs anyone to recognize it. In the following days, she continued working with the same dedication, but now something had changed. Each order delivered carried not only flavor, but a story. People began to notice. And when someone asked how she had learned to do that, she simply smiled and said, "From life. Life will teach everything to those who have the courage to stand up." The small business grew so much that Helena was able to rent a simple but welcoming space to set up her own production kitchen. The smell of baking cakes mingled with a peace she had never felt before, a peace that no longer depended on marriage, acceptance, or any promise. And when she signed her first fixed supply contract with a local company, her legs trembled. That paper contained more than just numbers. It contained courage, rebirth, and scars that now shone. Over time, her friend's house ceased to be a shelter and became a memory. Helena found a small, old house with peeling paint, but with a window that let in the morning sun in a way that made her feel hopeful. It was the first thing she bought with her own money since her divorce. Entering the door for the first time, she took a deep breath. She felt the air enter her lungs as if it were the first breath of life after drowning. The house wasn't luxurious, nor large, nor modern, but it was hers. Hers. Every corner. Every wall, and no one could ever take her away from there. She spent days tidying everything up with the same care she used when tidying her children's rooms. She ran her hand along the walls as if blessing a home. She put up flowered curtains, simple vases, the used stove she had bought with her savings. And when she finished, she sat on the living room floor, hugging her knees, and cried. But this time, she cried with gratitude. Her children, previously distant and confused by the separation, began to visit more often, first out of concern, then out of longing, and then out of recognition. They realized that their mother had carried that entire family on her shoulders for decades, and that their father didn't deserve the house he had taken. One of them said, one afternoon, "Mom, you are much stronger than Dad made you seem." Helena smiled, with that small smile, but full of light. She didn't hold on to hatred. She didn't need to. When someone loses what was toxic, the emptiness that remains is freedom. As the months passed, her clientele grew, not because she was perfect, but because she was genuine. People could taste it in the flavor, in the way she spoke, in the way she delivered each order while looking them in the eye. And one day, as she was closing the shop, she saw someone standing across the street, her ex-husband, standing there, too afraid to enter. He walked slowly, stopped at the door, and said, almost whispering, "Helena, I didn't know you were capable of all this." She dried her hands on her apron. "I didn't know either," she replied calmly. "I only found out when I needed to." He lowered his eyes, ashamed. "I wanted to apologize for everything." Helena looked at the man she once loved, the man who had destroyed her, and who was now destroyed by his own arrogance. She felt compassion, but she didn't feel the urge to go back. "I forgive you," she said, her voice calm, "but I'm not going back to where I lost myself." He broke down. She remained firm. When he left, Helena locked the shop door, took a deep breath, and smiled at the night. That smile was confirmation that her story wasn't over. It had only changed direction. The following week, she received an invitation from the community school. They wanted her to give a talk to women who were starting over. At first, she thought she had nothing to teach. But the coordinator insisted, "You are living proof that strength is reborn from the ground." In the talk, Helena spoke with an open heart. "I lost everything material and gained everything I never had, myself." The audience cried. She did too. And as she looked at those women with fears so similar to her own, she realized she was exactly where she needed to be, that her pain had become a bridge, that her story wasn't a failure, it was a testimony. As she left, walking slowly, she felt the wind on her face, just as she had felt it at the beginning of her rebirth. But this time, it wasn't a wind of uncertainty, it was a wind of freedom. Helena was whole, and finally, in control of her own life. In the end, when Helena could finally breathe without fear, something inside her changed forever. She looked back and no longer saw only loss. She saw a path, a hard, painful path, full of falls, but also full of strength, courage, and rebirth. She learned that life doesn't give back everything we take from others, but it always gives back everything we leave behind of ourselves. She realized it wasn't the divorce that destroyed her. It was the silence she kept for years. It was the day she believed she was no longer useful. It was the moment she accepted crumbs because she was afraid of being alone. But she also discovered that nothing, absolutely nothing, is more powerful than a woman who decides to start over. Not age, not abandonment, not loss. When self-love awakens, it doesn't ask permission. It simply rises. And Helena rose. Perhaps other people will look at her and say she won. But the truth is deeper. She rebuilt herself. And rebuilding oneself is not victory. It's rebirth. Now, when she wakes up every morning and sees the sun streaming through the window of the simple little house she bought with her own hard work, she feels a gratitude that overflows. Not because she has a lot, but because she has what is hers, and because she learned that everything she once lost was never truly hers. What was truly hers was kept in her own heart from the beginning, her courage, her ability to start again, and her heart, which, even broken, knew how to beat at the right rhythm to guide her to a new destiny. Therefore, Helena's story is not about a marriage that ended. It's about a woman who began. And perhaps, deep down, the question that remains for those who heard the story is, how many women still believe that their own life ends when a marriage ends? How many still think they are too old, too weak, too small to start over? Helena left the answer unspoken, but her life cries out for her. It's never too late to rediscover yourself. If any woman hears this story alone, hurting, thinking she has lost everything, let her know, losing is not the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of the best chapter. And when Helena took her first step away from the house where she was erased, she didn't imagine she would find herself along the way. But she did. And that is the greatest victory of all. In the end, her soul whispers a simple and powerful truth. I lost everything to find myself whole. And now, for those who have followed this journey so far, here is an invitation that echoes with affection and strength. Comment, like, and follow the channel. Be part of this community of women who rise up, who start over, and who discover every day the strength that fate tried to take from them. Here you will never be alone, because each story is the voice of a woman who survived the impossible. When a woman is reborn, all women are reborn a little with her.